to arrive. Given road conditions are variable, we'll give it a few more minutes before we get started.
I drove behind someone who decided it would be good to go 40 with their brakes and their turn signal on. the whole way. Awesome.
What's your trip down?
Out of state, please.
No,
No.
I decided I was gonna stay at my daughter's at in Hartford and drive down this morning. 10 o'clock started would be fine. But with the forecast, I came down last night. And I got here probably at 5:36, just when it was starting to did slide right through an intersection. So it was slippery, but I was here by then.
There are waters and sparkling waters in that cooler back there. But
Oh,
hey. Come here, Murray. Thank you.
space. Like I do during other meetings.
I'm Chris.
say hello.
Chris
We'll
Murphy,
do
hello.
full introductions in a bit, but
Check the temperature and height on this one.
I actually came down here last night, but it is colder there than it is
You
here.
mentioned it often is.
Yeah. But they got no snow.
Oh,
It was an interesting snow line for this storm. We're waiting for Ray and Steph Mulligan. I was gonna start at 10:35 video. We're recording. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order at 10:35. At the first meeting of a committee, it's typically an organizational meeting. And because we haven't elected a chair and a clerk yet, I will facilitate and manage the meeting to the point where we do appoint a chair. Dick and SVSU staff will assist with minutes today and at subsequent meetings. As this is a board-appointed committee, I'll be supporting you in following open meeting law. And as we look at the agenda and the first couple of items of business, or two of the items of business, these are important elements of complying with open meeting law. One is review of the agenda and considering any amendments to the agenda at the start of a meeting. And the second required element is public comment. Those items are a little awkward when you're having an organizational meeting and it's the first time people are together. But we will review the agenda first, and I put public comment at the end of the agenda with the idea that perhaps once we go through the material in the meeting, some questions or some feedback that community members who might want to make a public comment might have had addressed in the course of the meeting. That said, if there's somebody who would like to make a comment on something other than the agenda, I'm happy to facilitate the committee's consideration of adding a second public comment to the start of the meeting. So I'm looking at the screen and I would ask members of the public who are participating if anyone is interested in a comment on something other than that is on the agenda to give me a signal by raising your hand. Okay. Seeing none, so I would welcome a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you. Is there a second? Thanks, Nicole. Are there any requested amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? None. Oh, okay. Sit with us at the table. I'll make room for you, Fred. All right, in future meetings, the committee's work will likely be an executive session and closed to the public. The agenda review and public comment will be the first point of business, the first order of business. Want to let folks who are interested know that it will be unlikely that there will be action by the committee after an executive session, except adjournment. Going forward, agendas will be decided by the chair in consultation with me. And I thought it would be helpful to explain that to the public now so they know what to expect in future meetings. As with any other public meeting, minutes will be taken and posted on the website, but they may be very brief for those meetings that are primarily executive session. Want to start by doing a little welcome and introductions and then dive into more of the business and talk a little bit more about the committee's work before we appoint a chair and a clerk. So you know what you're in for or what you're not in for, as the case may be. So I am a Vermont educator. I've served public education in various capacities for 36 years now. 31 years for full-time public service in public schools, with the last 14 being superintendent. And in the last 4 or 5 years, I've been working as a consultant and an executive coach. And my work has focused on supporting education leaders, including boards, in their work. I have notes, so I don't forget to say anything. My role is to facilitate the superintendent search process. And my goal is to support you in doing that work, following a tried and true process that's been used multiple times in multiple places across New England for years and years. However, we want to customize that to your context, your community, your values, your priority. In facilitating the process, I will staff the work with the support of Nick. And explain options and pros and cons. And if I have a recommendation, I'll make it. But I want to be clear that the decisions are yours and ultimately the SVSU board's decisions. Okay. I want to introduce my colleague Dave Younts. He's observing and following my work and will do a little bit of helping today. Since he'll be in the room, he'll participate with us in the getting to know you kinds of activities. But I do want to emphasize that he is not participating in discussion and he's not a part of decision making. His focus is process only. I mentioned that Nick is also here to staff and assist us with our work. And Jess Bouchard, the DEI administrator for SVSU, will be with us in a little bit, and she will assist us as well. One of my goals as a facilitator is to facilitate in a way that ensures that all voices are heard in the process as a foundation for consensus decision-making. And when I say consensus, I don't mean necessarily unanimity, although that's great, right? That would be wonderful. I mean that everyone can accept the decision, even if it wasn't their first choice, their number one preference, because they're comfortable that all perspectives and all ideas were heard in the discussion process. So part of creating the conditions for being able to do that is knowing one another. So I want to start by a short getting to know you moment. And I'm going to go around the table and ask you all 3 things. I'm going to tell you the 3 things now, but don't panic. You don't need to remember them. I will reiterate what they are each time we go around the circle, but it helps people to sometimes know what those prompts are. I'm going to start with your name. Like to share your pronouns, you may, where you live and what you do. So easy one. The second round will be one thing about SVSU that you're proud of. And the third is one strength that you can bring to the search process. There's no need to rehearse. What you say can be the same as somebody else's or different. Your contribution should not be a judgment or a response to someone else. It really should be your perspective, your story, speaking from your heart. So we're going to pass around a talking piece so that you know when it's your turn, when it gets there, gets to you, it's okay to take a breath and think at that point, because you're going to be spontaneous and focused on listening to others as we practice this. And because, again, you can be spontaneous, you get to give your full attention to listening to others. So I told you already, my name is Tracy, and I live far north of here where it's colder in Hyde Park. And as I said before, I'm a consultant and coach. Which way would you? I'm going to go to you.
Sure. I forgot the questions already.
The first one is name, pronoun, like where you live and what you do.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Dave. I live in Arlington, so I'm a resident of the SVSU, and I'm a former superintendent. And Tracy, I served for 8 years in the Mill River School District, which used to be the Rutland South Supervisory Union pre-unification. Worked the last few years for a government contracting company based out of DC, and I too am consulting like Tracy. I'm here to support the process and support her and as a tangent, be able to support the community and learn as well.
I'm James Gallen. I live a couple blocks down the road in Bennington. I'm a teacher at Mount Anthony Union Middle School. I'm also the first non-superintendent to speak for strengths and what I bring.
You can hold on to that.
That's
Perfect.
Rachel Munoz. I live in Sunderland and I'm the assistant medical director at United Counseling Service. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And I am the program manager for crisis services for Bennington County. Is that right?
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'm Glenn Thurber, member of all three boards, in Woodford, and I work in the Wyndham Southwest Supervisory Union's behavior specialist. And that's that.
I'm Nicole Whalen. I live in Arlington. I am on the Arlington board, I'm the chair, and I'm also on the SVSU board. I work for the state of Vermont and do recruiting for our court system.
My name is Shira Sternberg. I live in Shaftesbury, Vermont. And I am the mom of 3 little children, and I run a Jewish group for families in the area with Rabbi Jared Greenfield as a volunteer.
I'm Erin Morandi. I was born and raised in Bennington. I am a paraeducator at Mount Anthony High School, and I'm finishing up my 21st year in the district.
I'm Nick Galt. I live in Sunderland. I am the Director of Human Resources for the SVSU. I thank you. That's me.
I'm Stephanie Mulligan. I am on the Mount Anthony School Board, and I'm currently the chair. I live in Shaftesbury. My background's as an accountant. I have been the treasurer of multiple of the school districts, and moved into this position when I left the treasurer position. I'm currently the director of operations for an engineering firm at Bennington.
Beth Lord, she, her. I am the principal of Pownell Elementary School. I have been there. This is my 3rd year there. Oh, I grew up and currently live right over the border in Massachusetts in North Adams. And was in Texas for a period of time before moving back 3 years ago to be with family again.
Renee Gordon. I live in Bennington. I am the SVSU Director of Finance. I think I've been in that role for 9 years. Before that, I worked in HR. And before that, I ran an architectural firm in town, but was also the treasurer for the Bennington School District for, gosh, probably 10 years.
Thanks. My name is Chris Murphy. I live here in town in Bennington. I know that Renee and Nick have been in their roles for 9 years because that's when I started on the boards. And very soon there was the shakeup in HR, there was the shakeup in finance, and I thought, what the hell, what's going on? So yeah, 9 years for both of them. I served as the chair of the Unified Elementary School District, and I served as the chair of the Bennington School District prior to the unification.
I'm Ray Molyneux. I live in North Bennington. Cabinet maker. I've been on, this is my 25th year. The North Bennington School Board, and most of that time I was also on the SVU School Board. You asked for something about anything we're proud of.
We'll go around and do that next time. Do you want to start the round?
Well, one thing, I think we made some very good appointments. 2 of those people that we have appointed are in this room and participants.
Great, we're gonna go that way. So
So
one thing about SVSU that you're proud of.
Sure, I'll speak specifically from a UBSD perspective. Over the last, I would say 4 years specifically, there's been enough between staffing decisions and initiatives backed by the board and just a wonderful community involvement. I think all of the SVU BSD schools have seen an improvement in student safety and students feeling good about going. We're starting to see finally the academic results of those that kind of increased, improved environments, and very proud of them, very pleased with them.
Thanks. I guess thinking from my perspective in the seat that I sit in, I'm proud of the work that we do in my department in the business office, considering there's only 5 of us. So yeah, proud of that. And our new digs. That was kind of involved in what happened.
I'm proud of the voice that the district brings. I worked in a much larger school district, and the voice of the community or even administrators was very muted, and it's not that way here. So I'm proud of that structure that's in place.
I am proud of our community, the educational community, and parents, that includes parents, teachers, administrators, and, the support staff around it. We frequently don't paint ourselves, the best in banner articles, or not, they're probably years ago banner articles. I think we're doing a really good job of promoting our strengths, including AP programs, and, I'm really excited about, the opportunity to, a leader in place to run this organization.
No surprise, I'm gonna talk about staff. I'm really proud of how our staff have weathered the last few years. Going back to March of 2020, I've watched and seen how difficult that's been for so many people. And I'm just proud of those who have kind of weathered that storm. I think we're more resilient and we're better prepared for the future because of the hard work they've all done. So, you want to try to catch us?
I'm really proud of our new DEI person and the focus we seem to be starting towards diversity and inclusion. And I work in a program where Jess comes in quite frequently, so it's really nice to be able to see her work and what she has planned for the district.
I'm very proud that we live in a place where we can be heard as a parent. And I have to say, I went to Shasberry, and I'm just very, very proud of the school. I think it's one of the best schools out there.
I guess proud of and not want to acknowledge the dynamic on the SVSU board. I think we come with different perspectives and different priorities, but I really appreciate the way that that group has come together to listen to each other and collaborate on making decisions. And that's not always easy when you've got people representing different constituents and different groups. And I have enjoyed that work a lot.
Whoops, that's Nicole stole mine. That I would be really proud of the commitment of the staff. Had the opportunity to work in this SU prior to leaving, and there's a lot of dedicated people here that, regardless of circumstance or the difficulties, they stay, and they deserve a shout out.
I'd say I'm proud of the way that SVSU collaborates with community partners and their openness to mental health at school.
I'm proud of our ability to toss and throw. That was amazing. But aside from that, from Florida, which is not a super friendly place all the time, but every place I've walked into, every building, every day when I pick up my son or go to work, someone says hello. Someone's there to greet. That's a nice feeling, and I'm proud to be in a place where that happens.
It's difficult to find cohesion in organizations, especially that are geographically and physically spread out. And I appreciated watching the efforts that I've heard some of you speak about from a staffing standpoint, board vision standpoint, like to find the things so that everyone can pull in the same direction. It's cool to watch that evolving and emerging over time.
Okay. And the last one is one strength that you bring to the search process. And I'll share mine. I am an insanely curious person. And I look forward to bringing my curiosity to the process. Do you want to start? We'll go this way.
You want me to start?
No, you
Jake.
can. I'm trying to shake it up.
Okay. As a teacher in the district, feel like I have a pretty good pulse on what staff generally feels are main concerns and priorities from instructional perspective and from perspective of an employee and what we would be looking for when it comes to a leader of the district.
I have a lot of very strange, like, kind of ties to this district. But I think that helps to offer different perspectives. Between my partner and I, we have 8 children in the district. I have family members that work for the district. I collaborate with the district myself and treat primarily children and adolescents. So I treat many of the kiddos that.
Strength that I'm gonna bring here would be an openness and a willingness to come to consensus. Because you're never gonna get 100% from everybody, and it's not about, any one person, it's about what's better for the whole.
For my job, I do recruiting, so I'm involved in the process of reviewing applications and screening candidates. I've been doing that for probably 20 years, close to. And I've been part of 2 previous superintendent searches as a board member.
Before I became a full-time mom, I'm trained in community organizing and political organizing. And so I hope, and I love to organize. So I hope to bring perspectives from many different parents and community members.
Dedication.
20+ years of dedication. Forgot to mention that I'm also a union rep. So I hope I can bring a lot of the things that I have heard amongst the para population in this area to to help with the decision of, what they would like to see as a superintendent. Are you ready? One more time.
From a strength, facilitation, logistics, like helping with organization support for the committee's work. And helping you do what you have to do.
I like Nicole, hire, that part of my job is hiring, and I think it's probably one of my strengths is hiring for the person and not just the specific skill sets or past work history. So with that, my view on hiring will help contribute to the process.
I am from the area, but not from the exact community. I've spent a lot of my career outside of the Northeast. And so I think just bringing perspective that, I've learned a lot about this community, but there's also a different perspective from the outside as well.
I think I bring probably a understanding of how complex our structure is. Being very intimate with it and having to build budgets for the 6 separate entities that we are. So probably the kind of the nuts and bolts of our organization.
I think I can bring a number of different perspectives to this process. So for the last 22 years, I've worked for the Department for Children and Families, both in the community and then at a statewide level currently. Have experience as a union rep for my own organization. So kind of I think that allows me to keep the perspective of the employees of the SVSU in mind as well. And I've just had the pleasure of being active in my kids' schools throughout the whole thing and then being active in the community at large. So that sort of plurality of perspectives, I hope will be of a strength to the board or to this process rather.
Well, I'm unsure, but I've been on these committees 3 times before. I've had 25 years on school boards, and I'm a very good question.
Thank you all for sharing that. I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit more. And kudos to all of you for expressing an interest in doing this work and to the folks that actually worked really hard to find an interesting mix of people that represent a whole bunch of perspectives. I think you did a good job with that. We will build on that practice throughout our work together of hearing from everyone and knowing a little bit more about each of our perspectives on different issues we'll consider. So thank you for practicing having your voice heard. The first thing we need to do is set ourselves up to operate. Before we elect a chair and clerk, I want to make sure everybody knows what to expect. So I want to review 2 resources that can help you understand what our task is and some major considerations for how we do it. In the folder that I shared with you, one document you'll find there is the Superintendent Candidate Screening Committee Charge. It's a few pages back on the right. And I actually read parts of it aloud to ensure everybody's clear about what our job is. So the Superintendent Candidate Screening Committee has the authority and responsibility to conduct the initial screening process that was given to you by the SVSU board. The process has already started because we've gotten approval from the Secretary of Education to begin the search process. And the process will continue until you recommend candidates to the full board. And then this committee dissolves. So it's not a life commitment, in case anybody was worried about that.
Hooray.
Yeah. You work with me to complete the process, and our goal is to try to present at least 2 licensable candidates, but not more than 3, so 2 to 3 candidates to the full board that meet the search criteria established by the board. And we will be discussing those criteria in executive session later today. We will provide information to the board on the finalist candidates' experience, skills, and related background details to the board following the screening process, but we shall not rank order the candidate list. We'll be making an unranked recommendation. And the full SVSU board retains the authority to hire the new superintendent. So we recommend they make the final decision and hire. Jumping down to the second line below committee membership. Committee members will be expected to participate in all aspects of the screening committee activities fully. If they fail to participate by missing 2 meetings or failing to follow committee rules and charges, their appointment will be revoked and a new committee will be appointed. The appointing committee, the committee that appointed the committee, did name some alternates. I've never been in a situation where we've had to talk about that or think about that. So if you're starting to struggle with meeting scheduling or any of the obligations, reach out to me and we'll figure it out. In terms of process, the committee is authorized to work with me to prepare, distribute, and review candidate materials using electronic resources and to conduct first round applicant interviews. Each committee is expected to review all candidates applying for the superintendent position and assess and rate each applicant. It's important that each of you complete your own assessment of each candidate and that you not discuss the candidates with one another or anybody else before a full group discussion to ensure fairness and confidentiality for the candidates. I find that people get new insights, their opinion changes, and the process is enriched when we pay close attention to that practice. Your ratings will be put together by me. possibly with other information. And some of that information will include references, which I will check for your finalist candidates to inform your decision about what candidates you'll interview and of course, what you'll recommend to the SU board. Screening committee shall agree to keep all applicant information confidential. This is necessary for a fair and inclusive process and a part of attracting candidates as well. The board will publicly announce the list of finalist candidates once references have been completed and following the first round of interviews. The screening committee chair is responsible for communications between the consultant and the SVSU chair. So there's a little three-way triangle of communications. Facilitates the bridge between those different pieces of the work. So you agree to keep all applicant, I just did that, didn't I? All screening committee meetings shall be warned and open to the public, going to follow open meeting law. However, we shall review committee materials and deliberate in executive session, complying with the open meeting law requirements. I'm going to talk a little bit about open meeting law next, but before I do, any questions about the charge? Perfect. Questions are welcome at any time. I hope you'll ask them here, but you're also welcome to email, text, call. Yes.
I didn't know if I could ask questions.
Yeah.
You said you could ask questions.
Oh, yeah.
What is the role of the folks on the jury?
This is a public meeting, a meeting held in public consistent with open meeting law. And Nick is on there to facilitate the hybrid, the remote access portion of the meeting. And those other people, I believe, are members of the public who are tuning in to observe the work of this board committee. And it'll become a bit more clearer when I talk about open meeting law, I think.
Okay.
Is Richard our note taking? Yeah, Richard's here, who is the secretary for many of our boards, so he takes fantastic minutes. So Richard, thank you for being here.
Is Nick also the second?
Nick is not a member of the
Not
committee.
member.
Nick is staffing the committee with me.
Okay.
Jess is helping with staffing the committee work. Dave and I are staffing the committee work. And Glenn is here to observe and be interested.
Have to be.
Okay?
Sure. Do the confidentiality, kind of guidelines apply to the applicants as well? Are they permitted to reach out to committee members and?
We're gonna talk about how committee members can respond to things like applicants and community members reaching out to you. A little bit. We obviously can't control what an applicant chooses to disclose about their interest in a position and where they are in the process. But I'll make some remarks about that in a little bit. There are pros and cons to doing that. Is it okay to wait?
Oh,
For me to answer that?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay,
sure.
great.
Thank you.
And if I don't answer it well enough, keep asking.
Oh, I think-
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about open meeting law and why we're being recorded and why it's on the screen. Thank you, your packet. Did I give you?
Last thing.
Last thing in your packet, this is my cheat sheet around open meeting law requirements. A little thing about public records. It's adapted from the work of the Secretary of State and it's streamlined and simplified. I'll tell you that anybody who's interested in being trained in open meeting law, there's a 35-minute video on the Secretary of State's website, and now chairs and all executive management, so a superintendent, are required to do that training annually, but anybody can. So Open meeting law applies to public bodies of the state and its municipalities, and it just so happens that school boards, SU boards, and committees of those bodies are all fall under that definition. So that's why we're following open meeting law. The law requires it. There's been some changes in law recently and clarify that there are two types of public bodies. One type is a non-advisory or decision-making body. Those are the bodies that have supervision, control, judgment over policy. They fill quasi-judicial roles like board hearings around student or personnel matters, and they have decisions about tax and money matters. A school board is that. A supervisory union board is that. An advisory body doesn't have any of those powers. And this committee is an advisory body. Our job is to recommend something to the decision-making body, SVSU. The open meeting law applies anytime there's a quorum of the meeting. A quorum is a majority of the public body. There are 10 of you on this committee, so a quorum will be 6. And a meeting happens anytime there's a gathering of at least 6 of you for the purposes of discussing the business of this group. And that includes discussing anticipated future business. Can't think of a good example for this, but if board members were discussing FY27 budgets, we're on FY26, right? Okay.
Let's not.
That's it. That's anticipated business. And even though it's not on the table now, if a bunch of you get together and start talking about it outside of a public meeting, that's not okay. So an open meeting law happens and we need to follow it anywhere it occurs, regardless of physical location. And so that means in person, remote, if we meet somewhere else, like a school. They can also come together over a span of time. So the way that most commonly happens could be email strings, where there's a chain of emails that ends up including a quorum of the body, social media discussions, and any other kinds of serial communications. If I send you a letter, you send it back to me, I forward it to you. All of that could be a meeting. Also, editing of documents collaboratively, even if it's not all at the same time, could be a meeting. We can do things like schedule meetings, clerical work. You can go to social settings and be in the same place together, provided that you're not discussing the work of the committee. And you can attend meetings of other public bodies, provided that you're not discussing this body's business. So you can all go to a board, a budget information meeting, for example. Just don't talk about the committee's work. And we could all potentially go to the SVSU board meeting to hear their discussions about your recommendations, as long as we're not discussing and making decisions. Okay? So the long and short of it is, if you have business related to the search to discuss, let's do it here, not anywhere else. We will have to be transparent about our meetings. Regular bodies have a standing meeting schedule. We will not have a standing meeting schedule, but hopefully before we leave today, we'll be able to compare our calendars and set our next meeting dates and be transparent about them, post them on the website. And we'll publish agendas at least 48 hours prior to those scheduled meetings. And they'll be posted in all the places that your districts normally post agendas, so the public can follow along. And we'll of course email them to you. New law was enacted that took effect January 1st of this year. And it requires hybrid meetings for state decision-making bodies. So school boards are required to generally offer both in-person and remote access. It is not required for this body to answer your question, but we're doing it anyway to be transparent and ensure the community has an opportunity to follow along. It authorizes remote-only meetings for advisory bodies, so we can have remote-only meetings. I recommend that we do for a couple of steps. And we will also have in-person only meetings that are primarily executive session for interviews. So that's what you can expect. We'll keep minutes. They'll be posted no later than 5 calendar days. You don't have to worry about that. We'll take care of that for you. Meeting recordings are also required for non-advisory decision-making bodies, your SU and school boards. We do not have to do that either as an advisory body. We are recording this one again in the interest of transparency, and that will be available for anybody who wants to watch it. Boards can meet in executive session, boards and committees, outside of the public eye when we are considering one of the categories or pieces of business that is specified in law that allows those discussions to happen outside of the public eye. We'll be talking about the appointment or employment of a public officer or employee. So that's the rationale for our work around candidate-specific information and interviews to be an executive session. It's useful to speak specifically about email and social media. Yes, you can do those. Email is especially helpful for meeting schedules, organizing agendas, distributing materials to discuss at meetings. But group emails, as I said earlier, should not be used to discuss the body's business, either a reply all or a serial email forwarded to multiple people over time. And again, collective editing of documents would also become or be considered a public meeting. So we need to find other ways to do that if that becomes something we need to accomplish. Something that comes up often is participation in Facebook groups, Front Porch Forum, and other social media. Those can become public meetings. So comments on a social media post that are viewed or made by a quorum of the board members could be construed a meeting. Board or committee members could be construed a meeting. And of course, that's not available to all the public, especially if it's a closed group. So strongly encourage people to, again, keep the discussion at the meetings. And for this body, reach out to me for any other communication needs. And again, we'll talk a little bit about how to handle communications when somebody approaches you in the grocery store or you see something on social media. Open meeting law also allows public meeting. Folks are allowed to attend. They're allowed to participate and have a reasonable opportunity to express their ideas. So we'll offer public comment every time, and they can hold us accountable for following open meeting law. I already spoke about training. I want to mention public records. Any written or recorded information, regardless of how we communicate it, that's produced or acquired in the course of our business is a public record, has to be maintained. And if someone requests it, we have to make it available to them. I think you will create very little. And, but be mindful of anything you write or produce and imagine if it was the headline of the newspaper. And if you aren't comfortable with it being the headline of the local newspaper, don't write it, don't send it, delete it.
That's the best advice that was ever given.
Yeah. Personnel materials are confidential, and we will keep them confidential in their entirety in the early stages of the process. It's an important thing to do to attract applicants without impacting their current position in their current organization. But I want to be clear that important candidate information will be public when we get down to the finalists. And the board, the SVSU board, will facilitate with me the sharing of that information to the community so that that later stage of the process can be transparent and thoughtful and include the information people need to know about your prospective next superintendents. Any questions about open meeting law? More than you might have needed, but when I have a chance to educate, it's helpful. All right. So the next thing I want to do is elect a chair and a clerk. Since we need to follow open meeting law and boards are required to use Robert's rules, it would be helpful for you to select a chair who has experience perhaps chairing municipal meetings. I know there are several of you here. I want to be helpful and tell you that the role is to work with me to set agendas, to assist with moving through the agendas, and facilitating decision-making when we get to that part of our work. I will staff the meeting and facilitate the content, so it should be an easy role to fill. The chair doesn't need to prepare that. The chair is also, as I said earlier, usually the person responsible for communication with the SVSU board and responsibility with communication from the committee and community if we get any feedback from the community. For tonight or for today's agenda, whoever takes on the role of chair can just ask me to walk through the agenda. So you don't have to feel like you have reviewed and discussed how to move the agenda. And I'll cue you if action is needed. Is there someone, are there nominations for the chair or someone willing to volunteer and accept the nomination on their behalf? This is, I love that eye contact.
Down.
I'm just.
Whoever does it, I'll make it really, really easy and lots of fun.
Are you interested?
I bet I'm as interested as you are. I don't think anyone here would make a bad choice, so.
Is there someone who's more accessible during the day for some check-ins with me?
I'm fairly accessible.
Yeah,
I'm pretty accessible, but I do think that both Nicole and Chris are stronger board chairs as I've only been doing it for a little.
How about one of you be the chair and one of you be the clerk, which has no responsibility except to back up the chair if the chair's not available.
if folks would have me, I'd be happy to serve as chair.
I would make that motion to elect Chris as our chair.
I will second.
Right. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed?
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, all right. And I need a clerk. Typically, a clerk takes the minutes, but SVSU, Nick and I will take care of that. The only role of the clerk would be to fill in for the chair if necessary.
Happy to do it. Or if you, Nicole, if you have time, and want to do it, that would be.
I don't have a strong desire.
I'm
So shy.
Nominate Stephanie to be our clerk.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Just be
All right, I want to talk to you about committee operations. In your folder. is a document that says, 24-25 Board and Search Committee Guidelines. My agenda item should have said guidelines rather than hands and agreements. This document was reviewed and adopted by the SVSU board to define, describe, establish agreements about how the board will work together, the SVSU board, for the search process. And I'd like to ask that this body consider it and commit to it or something very similar to it as well. The first 6 items are normal, good meeting practices that are recommended by the Vermont School Boards Association and parallel to recommendations for other municipal bodies. Simply keeping the best interests of our students and children in mind while balancing the needs of our taxpayers. You could say, and community, make decisions based on clear information, honor the board and committee's decisions once we've made decisions. Keep meetings on schedule and stick to the agenda. Keep remarks short and to the point to ensure everyone gets a chance to talk before people take a second turn. Respect others and their ideas. And the next ones are about roles and responsibilities and overlap heavily with the charge, the committee's charge and responsibilities. And it clarifies that I will support you and the board with search-related work and will work with the chair on meeting agendas and processes. Surprises to the board, to the committee, or to me. I ask that those be the exception, not the rule. Sometimes they're unavoidable, but that's pretty rare. We agree to ask either the chair or me to place an item on the agenda instead of bringing it up unexpectedly at a meeting. All of your requests can be directed to me, so process needs, I'm your go-to. Direct feedback can go to the board chair or to me. So one of the things that answers your the question or the implied question of what do I do if I hear something in the community, you can say, stop, I'm not the right person to receive that feedback. Reach out to Chris or Tracy, and here's how you do that. Or you can say, I'll listen if it's appropriate and pass that feedback on. Not necessarily engaging, just listening up and affirming and forwarding. When executive sessions are held, the board and committee members honor the confidentiality of the discussions and the private information of the candidates. Again, finalist information will be public, and that public information will be managed by the SVSU board. We don't have to worry about that. We're going to honor communication agreements related to the search. The committee chair, or if they designate, we designate someone, is the spokesperson for this body. So again, generally you're not responsible for speaking about the committee's business. You can direct them all to Chris or to me. And only the committee as a whole has authority. No individual board member or committee member will take unilateral action. We're going to follow open meeting law. And we're going to ensure the process is welcoming, respectful, and follows the district policy on non-discrimination. Are there things that people think are missing from that list? And folks support that list? Give me a thumbs up. Would you like to ask for a motion to approve the board and search committee guidelines?
Sure. And actually, just a word of explanation about how motions are handled. For those of you who don't know, maybe everyone knows, and just bear with me if everyone does. Typically, a motion is requested by the chair, motion is made. If it is seconded, it is then opened up for discussion. So Tracy just gave us an opportunity for some discussion. That will be the last opportunity. Then once that discussion is exhausted, we'll bring it up to the final vote. So that will be our process moving forward. Again, everyone may have already known that, but in case anyone didn't, there we go. So I would entertain a motion, please, to accept the board and search committee guidelines, please. I heard a first and a second. We'll call that Stephanie and Ray. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the board and search committee guidelines, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Good job. We're a good team already.
He runs a very efficient.
Awesome. Love it. Any questions about confidentiality? Anytime you have questions, please feel free to bring them forward. I'll answer them now or assure you that I'll answer them in the future. So the next thing I want to talk about is non-discrimination. I'm not going to talk about it. I've invited Jess Bouchard, SVSU's DEI administrator, to be with us for a few minutes and talk with us about bias in the search process and the hiring process and help us with some strategies to mitigate that. Turn it over to Jess.
So thanks so much. Megan's gonna be putting up on the screen, a slideshow I have, walk us through that. One of the things I did ask you to come together today, prepared to do is to talk about our mission statements. But I'll start us off. And just a little bit about me too. I just joined the district about, 6 months ago. I'm the DEI administrator, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. I come to this district having been a teacher for a principal. I lead a non-for-profit in the community called Queer Connect. And so this is an area that is dear to my heart, and an important part of hiring is that we are all on the same page and we understand our biases and we accept that, and then also make good change around that, break some habits so that we can come to the conclusion of hiring someone that is best fit for SVSU in a way that all of us, are aligned in that. So if you don't mind going to my next slide, I just want to quickly acknowledge today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Thank you for being here. It is a special day in the United States. And I just want to read this quote. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." And that's the work that we're doing in the search committee through the next few months, is making wholesome decisions and, again, acknowledging these biases, but making decisions based on the merit of our candidates. You don't mind going to my next slide? Thank you. So things we're going to discuss today, and Tracy, are you timekeeper for me? Sure. Wonderful. Thank you. I want to talk about common biases in the workplace, and especially during a hiring process. You might all know all of these things, but I think it's good that we are all present for this, so it's forefront of our mind in the next few weeks. I want to talk about strategies to mitigate those biases as we're acknowledging, but also breaking those habits, and then ensuring that an equitable hiring process for the search of a new superintendent. I think we all want that for this process. If you don't mind going to my next slide, thanks. So we're going to spend a minute just doing an opening activity. You should have gotten from me a printout of all of our mission statements, and I have it electronically, so I will also put that up on my screen as well. One of the things that is super important to the work that I do is thinking about alignment, and mission statements are made for a reason. A mission statement is designed to tell the world, what is it that we're doing? What is the mission? What is the value, the core value that we're collectively doing? And we have a really unique district in that we have 10 schools that are a part of our district. We have a mission statement that is the overall mission for the district. And I took a moment to just put them all together because all of our schools are saying, these are the things that we value. These are the things that we're doing. And as we're finding a candidate, for me, at the end of the day, that decision needs to be best aligned to the values of our district and the values of that candidate and the alignment of those two things and the vision that that person has. what I want to do is I just want to make a list with you all. I'm going to actually use that board over there. I brought some chart paper and then I realized there's not a good space to do that. So I'll do some writing over here. And your job, again, is looking at the mission statements is to help me with some words about values. What are our schools saying that we're doing? What is our district saying that we're doing? And let me just read the main statement for our district. Our whole district, the umbrella of the district is saying that Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union is committed to developing lifelong learners who contribute to their community and succeed in a diverse and evolving global society. And so if that's what we say we're doing, I want to make sure that we are ready to make good decisions based on those values. So I'm going to do some writing, like I said, over here on the board. You all are gonna popcorn style. I'm not using hands. You're gonna tell me some of the words that you are seeing as buzzwords in core values. I'm gonna slide this right behind you. Sorry, here. And what I want Tracy to do after this is we'll type these up and we're gonna put them in our folders so that again, as we're making decisions, we have these words and you know, as we're making alignment. So help me out, my friends. So what are, from that document, some of the core values that you are seeing? What are our schools saying that we value?
Community.
Yay! Keep going, folks.
Child-centered.
Okay.
Caring. Commitment. Safety.
Nurturing
That's-
environment.
Unified.
Something about learning and achievement, if I lump those together.
Well, maybe one more. 10 schools.
Collaborative.
Collaborative.
Supporting.
Trust and support. So I love this. You know, it shows that we have 10 really diverse schools, especially because what's interesting is I don't think anyone actually gave me any words from the mission statement of the district. So that means that our schools independently have values that are aligned, yes, to our district, because ultimately what we're saying in our district mission statement is at the end of the day, we want to graduate students who are able to go out into the world and be diverse and to be a part of society as a global citizen through these things, through being a community member, through a school that is child-centered and building a child to be, you know, a holistic human, caring, committed, safe, nurturing, unified, learning for achievement, collaborative, trust, and support. And so as we're meeting candidates, these are the things that are forefront for our minds of we want somebody who's committed to these things, who has vision for these things, and their merit and their achievement aligns with this. Does that make sense? So I want to just hold this and, you know, again, as we're going through this process, we're going to keep coming back to these core values so that, you know, we're making informed decisions. Thanks, folks. If you don't mind going to my next slide for me, that would be great. I'm just toggling between two computers, so I'll keep my notes up for me too. So I want to first talk about bias and decision making, so we all have an awareness of what am I talking about when I say bias. And I think the word bias is a hard one. It feels kind of heavy, right? It makes us feel judgmental. And that is not the point of this presentation. It is to make awareness of what are the things that we bring to the table, because we all do. Do you mind going to my next slide? Thanks very much. So I first want to talk about what is unconscious bias. And the definition that I like to use is these snap judgments that we make about people and situations based upon years of subconscious socialization. So just the things that we carry that we may not know that we are carrying, they're just in our brain. We have a kind of a Rolodex in our brain, or like a filing cabinet of things. And these are just the things that we carry, we heard, we kind of store in places, and maybe they are impacting our belief system. Our brain is hardwired to make quick decisions that draw on some of these assumptions. And so again, our job is to break some of those habits so that we can make those informed decisions and notice them. When we get to my next, go ahead. Yep. Two things I want to talk about in terms of unconscious bias that will be helpful is really thinking about explicit versus unconscious, because there's two. The explicit bias that we're talking about is when we have attitudes and beliefs that we have that we're fully aware of based on our perceived kind of understandings of groups of people. So for me, explicit bias is our learned experiences. We're growing up alongside family, a community that might be kind of feeding into our beliefs, and so we're carrying them. These are the things that we are aware of. I can tell you that some of the work that I do around anti-bias work sometimes looks like folks actually doing kind of some research for themselves. They're doing a test to see like, what are our biases? I can tell you today, I know some of mine, I'm not going to share them, but I know them because of my own personal experiences as a young woman of the earth who also is a marginalized person. Maybe some of the things that I'm holding because of my, of my experiences. Those are my explicit biases that I need to check at the front door when I do these things because I'm like, okay, I know that these things impact my decision making, but I want them to, sit next to me and not, be in my decision making. And then again, we're talking about that unconscious, what I just said on the last slide of when we show up to make decisions, we may not know these biases or unconscious biases are living within us. They are present, but they're unconscious at that level. I like this picture on the next slide because it shows you again that thinking process of conscious is what we're aware of, that unconscious is what we're not aware of. And so again, as we're doing this process together, you might be learning some things about yourself, or you might know some things about yourself, and we're going to take those beliefs, we're going to put them to the side, and we're going to make some good decisions together. I just want to give you an example. So an explicit bias might look like, again, this is somebody who's very deeply knows that this is a belief for them. A manager might openly state that they prefer not to hire women for a technical job due to a belief that men are better suited for the job. We're in 2025, and I can tell you there's some industries that there is a belief that men do that type of work and women are not suited for that. I think, there's also the opposite too. I can think of many different industries, especially in education. I think education is still pretty gendered in some ways. An unconscious bias would look like in that same scenario where maybe that hiring manager is overlooking qualified female candidates during the process simply because they don't fit the typical image of a tech professional in the manager's mind. It's not maybe something they bring to the table and they're outwardly saying, I don't think we should hire women. This is a subconscious, thought for this person. Maybe they have a bunch of candidates in front of them and they're thinking, I don't normally see this, I don't normally see women in this industry. I'm going to kind of put them to the side. I'm going to make some other decisions, maybe bring them back to the table, after I've really thought about those candidates that are male. So explicit versus the implicit. So I want to just take some time to talk a little bit about psychology and the different types of biases that I believe are the ones that show up the most. I have been a part of, maybe 12 different search committees, and I can tell you that in almost every one of them, one of these will show up at all times in the folks that I'm working with. So the first one I want to talk about is called affinity bias, and this is the tendency to gravitate towards people who are similar to ourselves. So we see them, we recognize them, we have an emotional kind of connection to these folks because we're like, oh, I see myself in them, right? There's something about them that they're bringing to the table that is desirable because I recognize that. And this could be appearance, it could be age, it can be gender, it could be authority. And so in my green, if you see, I said some things that I would recommend so that we're not, making these decisions, I would say finding common connections with every candidate. So rather than seeing one candidate and kind of aligning with them, it's in every single candidate that you're meeting. And my understanding is that we might have 5 candidates, that we are all making decisions together and kind of seeing connection between each one of them with ourselves. And I would also say to be cautious with hard to define terms like cultural fit. I've been a part of search committees. I can remember one in particular where we got down to 2 candidates, and I remember both of them were wonderful candidates. One of them had significantly more merit and was more aligned to the mission, was more aligned to the job description of what we were looking for. And because they were 2 internal candidates, I watched the search committee say, you know, this one has more experience, but I think people are going to like this one better, right? This one has a personality that is more desirable. And they went with that person. Even though this other person had more experience. And so they saw themselves in this one character, or not character, in this one person, the characteristics of this person, they still hired that person. And that was kind of hard to watch because, you know, I think that they made a decision that was harmful for the school because they thought, you know, they thought that there was more cultural fit. I want to talk about attribution bias. This is the tendency to attribute the behavior or actions of others to internal characteristics, such as personal traits or abilities, while underestimating the influence of external factors. So an example would be someone is late, candidate is late that morning for whatever reason. We have no idea why they're late. They may not even tell us why they're late. And we are already making the assumption that this person is lazy. They're disorganized. You know, we're making a decision from external factors. And, you know, maybe the real reason is, I mean, let's be honest, folks, maybe they are their mom. I like to a lot of things as a parent, not because I want to, but because I have children. Maybe they have diabetes and they're in the car and they're checking their you know, their sugar level. I don't know the reasons, but when we are starting to attribute these external things and saying that those are the characteristics of the person, I think we have to again step back and really look at the merit of the person. For me, ways to avoid this are focusing on tangible qualifications and skills rather than personality judgments, and considering the broader context of the candidate's experiences, including external factors that may have influenced their performance. So again, looking at merit, making decisions on merit, and trying to put those kind of personality traits to the side, you know, at that stage. I want to talk about confirmation bias. This is an interesting one. It's the tendency to look for pieces of information that support our pre-existing views and ignore data that contradicts our views. Strong emotional reaction. So I'm thinking of something, I like this image. It says evidence we ignore, facts and evidence. And then it says our beliefs, and then evidence we believe. So for instance, if we have a candidate that went to the same college that you did, right? And you're like, oh, I went to that college. Like there's clear alignment because I know what kind of students this college graduates. We're looking for confirmation and you know, kind of alignment. And again, some of these are a little bit similar. This one to me is really where we are isolating certain things. We're ignoring data and, you know, really assigning to this person what we believe their characteristic value will be based on, you know, pre-existing information. Ways to avoid this for me would be just being open-minded to all candidates, establishing a standardized hiring process, and that's what you all are going to do, is kind of best practice of what you all are going to do every single time you're meeting with a candidate. And then asking everyone the same skill-based questions. Tracy talked a little bit about this, but for me, I'm going to segue into fair practice after I talk about these different biases. Fair practice, one of the things for me is making sure that every single interview is identical. When we start getting off of questions and we're starting to, you know, and this one I guess goes back to confirmation bias too. When we start seeing in a candidate something and we start going off of our script and asking other questions because we are trying to gain more understanding about somebody. Somebody goes to the same college as you, and so you start asking those types of questions. You are kind of skewing that process because you are hoping to get certain information to build the narrative that you're looking for. When we have a practice that is so standard and so structured that every single candidate has the same exact experience, that's fair process, and I think it's important. Contrast effect bias is when you have two candidates, you're comparing them to another instead of being assessed individually. When we have 5 candidates and we're going through that process, and maybe at some point we are starting to eliminate candidates and we are saying, these 2 candidates are pretty similar, right? They remind me of each other. We're starting to kind of nitpick and say like, well, we need to eliminate one of them. Which one are we going to eliminate? They're very similar. I think it's important that we are not making judgments about similarities. We are making judgments on merit. And so that when we're starting to do that, maybe eliminate candidates and, work towards getting a finalist, we're just being mindful that every candidate is an individual person that has a skill set. And we're going back to our core values and alignment and making sure that, that we're finding someone that we're all looking for. Ways to avoid, again, standardized search process. We haven't talked about this yet, but I love rubrics for hiring. I think it's super important. Tracy is going to be working with you all on a rubric, but when we have a rubric, and educators in the room are going to say this again, we love them because it gives us some guardrails. We're looking at a rubric, we're scoring on numbers, and then when we're making decisions, we have numbers and we have tangible data to say, this person scored 25 points out of 30 points. This candidate scored 19 points out of 30 points, whatever it is. And we have data to, to inform our decision making. This is the most harmful one. This is cultural bias. And then this is when we bring stereotypes about individuals based on country of origin, religion, ethnic background without actually looking at the skills that they bring to the table. This is discriminatory. I see less of this, I think, during this process, but I just want to name it because it's harmful when we do it. When we start to say, these certain characteristics about this candidate are not fits for our community, or this is my belief around, this thing. I just want to name that it can be really harmful. And so to me, one of the things I don't think that we're doing for this process is a blind review. I'm just saying it out loud that I think that a way to eliminate cultural bias is by removing information like their names. Names are a huge one. We see someone's name and we already start to think certain things about them, right? We see a last name and we're like, oh, Bouchard sounds French. Whatever we're assigning, but names, we're removing information, maybe like an address where we might see someone's address and we think, okay, well, they live in Manchester, they live in these other neighboring towns, they live in Williamstown. We're starting to make assumptions about, about individuals. So I did put a resource here. This presentation will be in the folder. If you are curious and you want to take, a hidden bias test, just so you're aware, again, I take them often because I want to know what is sitting in my subconscious that I'm not aware of. So that I can, it can be the best version of myself when I'm doing a hiring thing. I want to just talk about a couple more, and then I'm going to move into fair practice, and then we'll do an exit ticket together. Halo effect is the tendency to draw a general impression about an individual on the basis of one single characteristic. They call it halo because it's like that one positive thing you see in someone, and it kind of clouds your judgment because you are seeing this one thing in this character, one characteristic in this person. You're like, I think that is so important, and that to me makes this person shine and stand out more than the other candidates. And then the opposite would be a Horan effect, where we have the tendency to see a bad thing about a person, and then that also contributes to us having a judgment about a person, and we are hanging so tight to that thing. Maybe just going back to that example in the beginning where I said you have a candidate who is late. They're 10 minutes late. They've hustled in here. You all are sitting here and you're like, not on my watch, right? Like, it feels uncomfy, but we've already attributed that person, and in our brain said, okay, this is not the candidate we want. They've been late. This one negative attribute is clouding my judgment. To me, lean into data. Literally lean into the data. look at that resume, look at your rubric, look at those core values, really make decisions holistically. Again, mindful of fair practice and then just evaluating holistically. I keep kind of coming back to that because we're thinking, kind of globally about the hiring process. Thanks. And then last one I'm going to talk about is important, and I end with this one because we are a group of people. And my side, conformity is the group think. It's the tendency to change one's belief or behavior to fit in with others instead of using our own judgment. So Tracy talked about this where it is nature, natural for us to want to sidebar with each other. We leave this room. I want to go and talk to Erin. And I want to have these conversations where I'm like, what do you think about that candidate? Right? And we're having these conversations where she might say something that is important. And I'm like, wish you didn't say that. Right? Because now I'm going to think of this candidate separately. When we are starting to kind of spread out, have those conversations, the conversation should be wholesome in this room together. But we also don't want someone's opinion to sway the way that we're thinking. So this is what I would recommend for this one is to give yourself the chance to form your own opinion. Take notes on your rubric. Great. Bring your own notebook. Write your notes about your candidate so that when you do come back to the table, you already have those ideas in front of you and they are yours. They're not anybody else's. They are yours. And then again, agree not to share opinions about candidates with colleagues too early, so that you have a kind of a timeline and a narrative of your belief about a candidate. Other biases, so I didn't specifically talk about them, but these are the ones that make us most uncomfy, is when we are making bias on gender. Again, certain industries, I would say education, I think we have our own kind of stereotypes and belief systems of who we hire typically. Age is another one. I would ask that when we are thinking about our candidates, we are not making decisions based on the age of a candidate. Someone's too young, they don't have the experience. Someone's too old, they have too much experience and they're at the end of their career. We are making informed decisions again on the core values and the alignment. Ethnic and racial, I think this is a really important one to be mindful of. Class, appearance, the way someone looks, family, sexual orientation, ability. We think that some of these things kind of limit candidates sometimes because of stereotypes, the lifestyle, and then the belief systems. One of the things Tracy said too, it is very easy to fool people. I've watched many hiring committees that are Googling candidates and looking at their social medias and every other thing. Tracy is going to do a really excellent job, I promise, of asking the right questions, references, your background checks. There will be all sorts of other things that we do. The things that we need to know are going to come up. I promise they always do. When I was a principal, I hired a lot of people, and when I found out the things I needed to know every single time, additional homework. The one thing I also want to say too is family. That one kind of stood out to me because we live in a small community. I don't know if some of our candidates are local. I don't know if they're internal. But when we start to create a narrative for someone based on our belief of maybe their family or, the things that we might know about them behind the scenes, those things should not be coming to any of these tables. People's history, their backgrounds, etc. You're making informed decisions on present today, in the moment, when you're at the last table of decision of making those recommendations to the board. I think it would be incredibly harmful to make a decision on things that did not ever come to the table. Does that make sense? So if you know something about a candidate that not everybody knows about, I don't think it's fair to bring it to the table. I think that's, really harmful. Tracy's going to find out all the things that she needs to know and she'll share that with you. So let's talk about fair practice real quick. It does align to some of the things that Tracy has said, but I'm just going to put my thoughts here. Great. So fair process for me is a practice that encompasses not only job discrimination law, but also the idea that hiring should be based on merit. and not related to a candidate's ethnicity, gender, religion, or any other quality unrelated to their skills and expertise, kind of what we've been talking about. Organizations hiring must adhere to both labor laws, of course, that prohibit discrimination in hiring. So we're talking today, and then other diversity hiring tactics to adhere a fair hiring standard. So to me, these are like my top 8. Using inclusive language throughout the whole process, and I'm not just talking about pronouns. I'm talking about words that impact people. And being mindful of that knowing that there are some words that we assigned to gender. There are certain words that we assign to race, ethnicity. Words matter. We're being careful of them and we're being mindful of them. Our language that comes into like, we're past this point, but when we posted our job posting, we were mindful of language. Any of the other things that we're doing, we're putting together questions. We're being mindful of the language we're using. We're being inclusive. Again, number 2, just being mindful of our personal biases. We're going to bring to the table the best versions of ourselves. We're thinking about equity at the forefront of our mind. If possible, a blind review process, which we're not able to, but again, I'm giving this training so that you are informed. You can bring this to you in the next process that you're doing. Standardized interviews. Don't go off script, folks. We have questions. Tracy's gonna help you stay with your questions. You'll come up with a process of how you want to do that, but it should be unified every single time. Skill assessment. Again, we're gonna use that rubric. Fair background checking process. Tracy's our gal. Thank you. Data-driven decision-making. Any pieces of information that we gain in this process, those are the things that are helping make our decisions. We're taking time to do that. And then lastly is evaluate the hiring process to improve. So I would, at the end of this, come back together and talk to each other. How'd that go? Right? And recalibrate at any step. At any step of this process, something is not fitting. Our friend Chris is going to help you all in making a good process and a better one, an effective one. But I think at the end, let's do that and make sure that we are doing that because we have another person to hire too. We have an assistant superintendent we're going to be hiring right after this. And it's going to be important that we get this right. So let's do one last thing together. Tracy, am I good on time still? Like 10 more?
I'd say 5 more.
5 more. Wonderful. Okay. Do we want to do a little breakout? Okay. So the last thing I want to do is I want to reflect. Reflection to me is an important part of a process. Where you've heard information. I want you and your small group to come together and think about my questions so that, again, we're connecting with each other, we're reflecting, and you are starting to do the process of breaking, the biases that we carry. So 3 questions I have. You're going to go into a small group quickly with either myself, with Nick, with Tracy. Does that work?
Yeah.
Or do you want to stay in this one room?
Tough even for me.
Wonderful. Okay. Do we want to stay in one room or?
Yeah, we can just go to.
Okay, wonderful. Huddle up, folks. 3 questions we're going to be thinking about. Reflecting on your own experiences, have you observed instances where bias impacted a hiring or decision-making process? I gave you a couple of my own examples. I've seen it. This doesn't have to be related to you. This is not personal of you saying, these are my biases. This is just you saying, I've been a part of something that felt a little uncomfortable. I saw it. It impacted the hiring process. I just want to share that with the group. And if you haven't, and this is your first time, really doing this work together, that's a great pass. Second question says, what steps have you personally taken in the past to address or prevent bias in professional settings? So this is asking you a little bit of personal kind of introspection of what have you done, right? As someone in a workplace who is trying to make the environment, one that is effective for everybody. What are some steps that you've personally done? And then the third one, what practices can this committee adopt to ensure transparency and accountability in the hiring process? So now we're starting to think, great, we all have this training, we all have this information. What are we going to do about it? So, boop, great. So I will count off by 3s. If you are a 1, you're going to come with Jess Bouchard. If you are a 2, with Tracy, you want to go out here?
I'll go in the corner right there.
Corner.
And Dave can have that one.
Dave will have 3s. Okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. That's great. Ones, I'm gonna take you over in the corner over here.
Welcome.
Be glad you're not in my classroom. I'd be counting right now and making you move quick. Sorry, folks. I'm proper. I'm like, are you one? I am. Great.
Right.
Are you one?
Yeah.
I love that. Lovely. Okay, so next question.
It's obviously very impressive. Good to have.
Yeah, I kind of struggle.
Where they.
All right, so my responsibility. So,
All right, so the first question is.
You're fine.
have you observed instances where bias impacted on?
So, I'm happy to share, again, nice information watching, final two.
I've worked with a hiring manager who was reluctant to move forward with the candidate via Thursday. So has to be on the hiring committee and have almost that same position in the last person hiring.
Go right to what the points, just judge on the merits. Don't judge on the, stick to the rubric, stick to.
Interviewing process.
Sure.
I've seen where.
Play softball and be like, because they do need softball.
Sure.
Rural softball.
Wonderful.
You know,
Those experiences.
for guys to not get an automatic. So I can take the job, but it's not. And I also played softball. Sorry.
Like, not that I was involved, but I've been around experience for proximity. I was in
Narrative about, is this their job?
The higher you go in the site, the stepping stone.
very impactful.
Like having that narrative.
So definitely having to recognize that and take it seriously or has had.
It was age and physical attributes.
Been a part.
Which will.
Yeah.
And the administration, there was a basketball.
The question is. Because it seems to me that Bill is pretty. And you made it relate to.
I just.
I'll give you the different.
Right.
Again, leadership journey, when I had the opportunity to hire you to member.
I really wanted to.
I candidates, people who tried
They haven't.
and worked like.
Choices would be the choices that lead towards comfort, then like what's the physical push us in
My
a
team,
direction and then comfort falls.
different styles, different.
I think that's, I think
More intentional about.
All right, next question.
Or.
Steps you've personally taken on. So it doesn't say this because I know it sounds self-serving, but I do try to be cognizant of the time I spend speaking in meetings.
Let's just say we personally changed.
Like I organize myself, take over meetings, so it's different. I try to do that. I try to be wary of that.
This one first, I participated in 2 years of Jedi.
Jedi training.
Thank you.
There it is.
There.
In first and
So
second.
does anybody else have
It's really helpful to be able to.
steps they've taken
Talks about
to
not deviating
prevent
from
bias?
it. Hopefully we can talk about, because there are questions that could be relevant. You don't want to miss that opportunity, but when I find the people qualifications that you're looking for, it will help their social media and stuff, which is tricky for working.
Okay, okay.
Pick up on different cues that don't necessarily. Like.
I'm not sure what.
Interaction.
That's okay.
Mine is, really sticking to the scripted, like.
Yeah.
and Not finding that one thing that someone wants to elaborate on,
Yeah.
or talking about like their connection to the college or where they live, or. So really just sticking to the questions and not having any comments. In those moments.
Sure. Great.
Comments.
One of the useful things.
By those who are in the interview, so.
I wouldn't say it's really.
No, I had that same experience too, and kind of creating the.
Because of college. I think more different.
Take it into.
Well, are we allowed follow-up questions?
Get with it.
I work currently.
For kids, I don't get much.
Sure. So I
Being a kid of the.
think
As you understand and have almost.
Culture.
question sometimes. They miss the mark. and they don't answer questions.
One of my personal challenges that I realized, I have a really hard time understanding accents. So we've had it, and I feel like it creates my.
Morning, 70s. Graduated high school in the 90s.
To help
Shouldn't be asking.
make sure I can get. Everybody. Because I know that
Actually, the committee.
I'm working on the second part,
Sure.
so I'll.
Any.
The second part, but that's.
Yeah.
The adopting.
Yeah, I mean, one that we're already doing is so many.
Exactly.
Provide updates.
So while Jess was talking about confirmation, she spoke about the
Much
importance.
information as we can share without.
Sure, I get that, you know, and working for the state. and being
If they're off.
I always tend to get hung up on is that often on this answer will be given that for me anyway prompts what I want.
People that are
So what do you see as the role of
that are in this
cooking?
So putting that.
What you, what are some things that you're doing? What is something that you do to make sure that, bias?
To clarify the answer. Strategies for community.
This year, I had, I found out that my supervisor was going to be younger than I was and
Yeah.
much less experience in the district.
Okay.
And I was kind of more about, generally like, how is this more about? And then the more I just, what, forget about it. I realized that it was a good thing. It, made us more positive, so getting rid of, the bias that I had. Made me realize that this was
Everybody else listens.
Check your bias at the door and you recognize.
Everybody has one.
Last question is.
That can help.
Judging.
Maybe we haven't talked about.
Follow-up questions and follow-up.
all the
All
Nothing I should have thought.
I got that.
I think.
I think it was super helpful to hear her reiterate.
Well,
Yeah.
think Mr. Ball over.
What I thought.
It sounds very simple.
We're lost.
Okay, team, stay standing.
The people who work in that issue, are you connected?
Stay where you are.
I am.
Be comfortable, stretch and move. Just want to emphasize a couple things that we're gonna avoid ranking while you're doing your independent reviews and while we discuss. Do your homework outside the meeting and don't discuss until we're together. Be prepared to listen to other people's points of view and different ideas. I want to emphasize open-mindedness. I think that's my biggest theme for this search. We will use agreed upon criteria for candidate review, and we will co-construct that with some of the community feedback we got through the survey. We'll do that during executive session today. We'll make sure our interviews are welcome and inclusive. And not asking questions about things that were on the list. And I want to emphasize again, please do not do your own research. Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, do not reach out to references. We'll talk about strategies for responding to that. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that there have been communications and conversations in the community already, I believe, about people who some believe might be candidates. And that happens, especially when you're worried about a very important position and there's some relief around, there is somebody good who's willing to do this really difficult job. I want to encourage all of you, as well as the community, anybody who's tuning in, to remain open-minded. And for the community in particular, if you have feedback, you can call me, text me, email me. we'll talk after a quick break about how committee members can kind of stay out of those conversations so that you can remain unbiased and open-minded. The short strategy is direct all feedback to me. I didn't tell you at the beginning of the meeting where restrooms were. And just when you need to take care of yourself, please step up and do. We have snacks. So I'd like to invite you now, Nick, to give us a read on where we can get what we need, restroom snacks. Take 5 minutes to refresh yourself, and we will work and eat at the same time.
So we have restrooms out here as well as a single restroom accessible through the main area. We've got some light lunch sandwiches, salad, and then drinks here in that level where waters, sparkling waters. So.
All right, so try and be back by 12:21. If I think we need more time, I'll extend it.
Hey, thanks folks for listening. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Can I just leave this up and running? You mute it just so they don't hear us rumbling, or just leave it?
Yeah, you could mute it and take it down. We can watch this.
Yeah.
To try to figure out this is what is a way to do.
So I wanted to talk briefly, as I alluded to earlier, about some norms for communication. And we've touched on strategies for that in a number of contexts, but put it out there all at once in one setting. So in terms of norms or expectations for communications, in our operating agreements, we've affirmed that executive session work is confidential, so we won't be communicating about it outside of the sessions. If you need something related to the committee's work, I am your contact for that. Feedback goes to the chair, and the chair is our spokesperson. If it's from you, it's easy to reach out by email. If it's from a constituent, so if you're out and about in the community and someone grabs your elbow and says, hey, I want to tell you X, you can interrupt and say, thanks for touching base with me. The designee for the feedback is Chris, and you should email him. Depending on what they want to say, where you sense it's going, you can say thanks for reaching out. I'll listen to you and pass the feedback on to the committee. Or you can say the content of the committee's work is confidential. I can't talk to you about it. You can get more information about the search on the district's website or reach out to the consultant or chair. And again, the board will handle communications as we approach that stage of the process. And through Nick, we will ensure the website is up to date with latest process information. It's not uncommon for people to ask if somebody applied or advocate for or against somebody they think applied. That's the one that's pretty important for you to say, I need you to stop and direct that feedback to Tracy, and I'm happy to receive that. And my email is very available on the website. I also wanted to clarify that you don't have to be soliciting feedback from people about what they want. We've done a survey, we've gotten community input. All you have to do is be yourself and bring your experiences and your perspectives to the process. We really are a group with a lot of different life experiences and viewpoints, and Glenn, you did a nice job. Any questions about communications, wonders, worries? If you can, while you're eating, in your folder is a search timeline. draft, it won't ever be draft. This is a living, changing document that I update periodically. I'll probably update it again, I hope, for Wednesday when there's an SVSU meeting and I get to update the full board. A lot of the work, preliminary work on the first page has been done. We had a special board meeting in December. We created the committee charge and formed the committee through a survey process. And, we posted the job description and, disseminated it broadly. We created a website where the community can stay up to date on the process. We surveyed the community to get their feedback on the priorities, skills, and attributes of the next superintendent. And last thing on the first page is happening today. The committee is having its first meeting to frame the search process and review the committee charge. And all of the other things on that carry on into the next page. Before we leave today, I hope to establish a meeting schedule that will update the timeline. An executive session will review the skills and attributes survey and use that to help with our candidate review criteria. We'll develop that complete candidate review criteria. And we'll talk about how we will be developing questions for interviews of candidates. After that, there's homework for you to do on your own schedule, and that is to review individual paper candidate materials. Using the framework that we agree on, then we come together and all voices are heard and we talk about how we rated candidates and why we rated them. And use that to identify the candidates you would like to interview. We hold those first round interviews. Typically, those are school day type things. And we try and block out a day if we can to do that. But we'll talk about your schedules. In this case, I will do the reference checks. And then we'll come together and combine your observations from the interviews with reference checks. And you will make your recommendation to the board. So there's the independent work. I think our next meeting can be virtual. Then there's interviews, which will be in person. We can debrief virtually and make our recommendations that way. But if it feels like we need to shift to in-person for any of those, we can talk about doing that. So I would like to I think I'd like to talk about dates after executive session, once you have a better idea of what the candidate review process will take. Because my first question for you will be, how much time do you need to review candidate materials, given what we've agreed upon? So I'm gonna put that off and say that I think we're up to the need for an executive session on the agenda, but we should take public comment before we do that.
Director Galt, you're able to help us navigate if anyone, it looks as though everyone online, with the exception of perhaps Kristen Olmsted, or folks from the media or our own folks.
Kristen's a board member.
That's okay. Yeah, thanks. Sorry, Kristen. Thank you for that. Director Galt, are you seeing anyone online who wants to participate in public comment? Okay.
Digital hands raised.
Okay, thanks. So then moving on to executive session. So I'd entertain a motion to move into executive session pursuant to 1 VSA subsection 313(3), please. Thank you. We'll call James and Renee. Any discussion on moving into executive session? Hearing none. All those in favor of moving into executive session, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. We are in executive session.
I'm gonna move, for those of you who have joined, I'm just gonna move you back to the waiting room.
So just as a word for folks who have not ever been part of an executive session before, we are bound by open.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I entertain a motion to exit executive session, please. First and a second, any discussion about exiting executive session? Hearing none, all those in favor of exiting executive session, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have exited. We've also exhausted our posted agenda, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn, please. Thanks.
Motion.
You got a first? Second. We got heard hooray with the second first. Okay, so we have first and second. Any discussion about adjourning? Hearing none, all those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for your
All right.
work.
Thanks, Tracy. Thank you, Dave. So sure, one of the crazy making SVSU, SVU ESD Pledge of Allegiance meetings, you brought up the
Recording
fact that we had
stopped.
scheduled a meeting during a religious holiday, and so we need to just be paying attention. So I'm sure.
I